bit about Alcazar Energy, what it is you do?
Thank you for having us. So Alcazar Energy is a renewable energy developer, owner, and operator. We're headquartered in Dubai, and we have offices in Jordan and Egypt, as well as in Turkey. The last 4.5 years since we started the company, we have built one of the leading portfolios in the Levant region. So that includes half of the privately owned wind farms in Jordan, which combined with our solar capacity has been a foreign direct investment in the country of about $450 million. We also own the second largest portfolio of solar generation in Egypt. Our entire investment to date in the region has been the order of $800 million. And something that we like a lot about our company is that all of our projects that we have today in operation or construction, all of them sell power to governments below grid parity. So between all of them, they save about $1 billion to the local countries during the life of the contracts that we have with them. So that's the difference between the gas that we displace, the value at which they can sell it, and the cost of the electricity, which is great because it also makes, it's not just foreign direct investment, it's not just additional employment, but it also helps them to be more independent from oil and gas, which is also a big priority for those economies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes. And where do you see the most potential for the growth of wind and solar power in the Middle East in terms of particular countries?
So wind and solar in the Middle East has a capital requirement of about $500 billion between now and 2030. That includes the META region and Africa, so Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. When you talk about wind, today you have a number of projects under development in Tunisia and Lebanon, which are in different stages of development. Those will be the first vintage of wind farms and solar plants in those countries. You will have a few more plants in Jordan, in Morocco, but not a lot more before the storage story is formalized in those countries and formal policies have been executed. And you see very large plants coming up in Egypt. You may have seen on the news plants announced between 500 megawatts and even 2 gigawatts. And those are real projects. Egypt has a tremendous wind natural resource. And some of those projects are about 1/3 of the local grid parity of the country. So they generate tremendous savings for the country and they would help. It's an economy with 100 million people that needs to generate savings. So I think that would be a great source of savings for Egypt.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And to what extent can renewable energy help Middle Eastern countries preserve their domestic fossil fuel reserves and preserve capital, like you've been saying?
So a lot of the electricity that we are producing through wind and solar is actually displacing megawatt hours that would otherwise be produced with gas, as is the case in Egypt and Jordan. So when you just measure the gas that we displace across the portfolio that we have today, and you reduce from that amount the cost of the electricity that we sell to the government, you can calculate that we save those governments about $1 billion during the life of our plants. So that's a substantial saving for those countries. You're not just bringing foreign direct investment, you're not just creating additional jobs, you're also helping them to become less dependent from the oil and gas, which is a priority for those economies.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are the contextual issues unique to the region that you have to take into account when developing projects? What are the challenges?
So the region has several challenges, but we think the main challenge for those $500 billion to be deployed in the region is human capital. So you may have situations where private PPAs are not straightforward and bankable today. You may have situations where you have communities that don't have the right support from the local government. But in all of those situations, in our experience, if you can have the right human capital that would work with that government or with that energy company to bring together IFC, EBRD, and find a bankable solution, you will see that very often you can have as a result a bankable project. So there's a very real energy need, the bottleneck, and there's a very real energy need, and there's a great availability of capital that wants to come to the region. The bottleneck is really the human capital, people willing to do the hard work to make these projects bankable in a way that ours and other institutional investors can come and provide that funding.
Well, what are the new opportunities in the region? Like I've heard a bit of talk about smart cities, and then elsewhere in Africa, there's a lot of work going into decentralizing energy and bringing off-grid energy sources to people that otherwise don't have electricity access. Do you see opportunities there?
Yes. So there's two aspects that are very exciting in the region. Number one, the old school utility scale renewable energy requires $500 billion of investment. And we need to figure out a bankable way to deploy that. And number two, you're hearing things like NEON in Saudi, and also distributed generation in sub-Saharan Africa, so smart cities or distributed generation. In distributed generation, we see about $600 million people who are off the grid in sub-Saharan Africa. And you see a number of companies that are starting to give them a solar rooftop and the ability to connect their cell phone and maybe a small light bulb to it, literally changing the quality of life. By this year, we calculate that in excess of 1 million people have already been connected. So it's not only a game changer for those families, it's not only a game changer for those economies, it's a whole new market that we haven't seen. 600 million people, you're talking about the size of Facebook, right? And the level of penetration that you hear from these companies is 97%. So the communities, they all want to work with them. And these are affordable products. They are providing this solution at a price that is below what those families are already spending on kerosene. So that's a parallel universe, if you want, to the one of utility scale generation that we have been analyzing very closely. Hopefully we'll be doing something in that space.
How would you monetize that market? Would you go into financing a pay-as-you-go solar model?
That's right. That's right. What you do is you install the system in people's rooftops, and they will pay. In most cases, they do it to the local phone company, which are usually very well established, and it works very well because the moment they suspend payments, then the system will be suspended as well. So there's a very low default ratio. That's one of the part of the due diligence we have been doing on them. There's a very low default ratio.
Great. So that's a new opportunity that you'd be looking to enter into soon. And lastly, how do you see the company evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Where would you like to end up?
So look, we're very fortunate that in each of our markets, where it's in Jordan, where we have a leading role, in Egypt, where we have a leading role, we have been able to get to a good, healthy percentage of the market. The region needs $500 billion of infrastructure just for solar and wind between now and 2030. All we want to do is to continue the same playbook, to try to come to Tunisia, to try to come to Lebanon, to try to come to sub-Saharan Africa, and to be helpful and to help to mobilize a portion of those $500 billion to the region. That's what we want to do.